In this video, I am going to code an ASP.NET Core MVC web application that has a one-to-many relationship with my users of the application and their orders. And so you can see here in this UML diagram, I have a one-to-many relationship between users and orders. And this is the product that we're going to build. It's going to be CRUD, create, read, update, and delete on the orders themselves. So you can see I've got 3 orders in my system. 2 of these orders have the same user, so just demonstrating that a user can have many orders. Of course, we can view all the orders, we can edit an order, we can get the details of an order, or delete an order. And so create new, read, update, delete, CRUD operations on a one-to-many relationship in ASP.NET identity users. And so there's an awesome built-in user system in identity. And the reason I'm doing this right now is in my class, a lot of my students are starting to make their own users table. And it's kind of like, well, why reinvent the wheel? Built into ASP.NET, there's this system called Identity that has a secure login system kind of pre-built out of the box. It's easy to start with and easy to get going. So I wanted to make this quick application, this one-to-many that performs CRUD on orders with the built-in identity system. So that's what we're going to build. Should be able to whip this together relatively fast. Please code along. Of course, we need to start with a new project. So this is Visual Studio Community. You might need to download Visual Studio Community. And you'll need to install the templates for ASP.NET. And so here we see ASP.NET Core Web Application. You can kind of search for C#. And if you change this to Web, you'll find this template right here. But it's in my recent template, so I'll go ahead and select that. And my solution will just be my ordering system. And it doesn't really matter what the product is. Web ordering system. And let's name the project the same. Normally if you you can have different names or the same name, but the solution and the project name. Now here is something that we're going to do that is not default. We're going to select individual accounts. And what this does is it brings in that identity system, that built-in user account system. It's pretty awesome. I definitely would encourage you going deeper down the rabbit hole to understand identity. We're just going to get started with it today. And again, you'll kind of see what's out of the box with this identity system. And so the first thing that I do here, when you select this system, if you boot it up, you'll see that there are pages already to register users and log in users. I'll just kind of boot this up real quick to demonstrate this. That there's kind of a built-in, all the views, all the controllers are there. Under these links, there's a register link and a login link. But what I like to do, let me close. What I like to do is kind of go into this app settings.json, and I like to give my database like an actual name. Maybe I'll call this web ordering system. And there's all this random string. I'm going to have a simple database name. So my web ordering DB, how about that? Web ordering DB will be my database name. And if I go to view Object Explorer, SQL Server Object Explorer, that will show me my instances of SQL Server that are running. This local DB should be installed by default if you selected the ASP.NET install package when you first installed Visual Studio Community. Anyways, here's my databases, and you can see I don't have a web ordering DB that's been created. However, with the package manager console, if I run an update database command, that will run the migrations to go ahead and create the database. So that update database command, again, I typed that fastly, but update -database. You run that, should run without error, and if I refresh now, under my databases, I have my web ordering DB. And if I expand that, you can see all these tables that are there for your user login system. Here's my ASP.NET users table that I was mimicking in my UML diagram. Let me open that back up. So there it is. So there's my ASP.NET users out of the box. There's, I mean, again, the benefit of this is you're not reinventing the wheel. Of course, Microsoft created this, so there's built-in security, there's built-in performance. This is built. This system, this database system, is built, better than I could build it myself, of course. So that's the benefit of using this built-in system. Now, if I go into this table and I view the data, there's no users. I don't have any users. Well, fortunately, we can register a new user, and I will use my Gmail. Click register. And I'm not going to do that. Now, of course, you want to set this up to have emails sent to verify. It says, hey, you don't have an email sender registered. Of course, you can configure that, but for now, just click here to confirm your account. I will do that. It does not log me in by default. Here, if I go home, I'm not logged in. Let me go ahead and logged in as my user now. Let me type a bad password just to show that, that doesn't work. Now let me type in a good password. Click remember me, sure, and there I go. If I now were to close this down, I think because I clicked remember me, it would remember me. Nonetheless, actually we can test that, close it, open, just see, there it goes, good, it remembered me. And of course we could log out, log back in. Wonderful. I mean, it doesn't get easier than that. I remember I got into this, learning how easy this built-in system was, and it was kind of jaw-dropping. However, our users don't have orders yet, and that's kind of what we're creating, is the one-to-many relationship between orders and doing the CRUD operations on on orders. So let's close that down. Let's minimize that. And in an MVC, of course, our models are going to be where we start to create an order model. So a model is just a class. As I say, create, add a class. Okay, model is just a class. And this will be order.cs. Of course, we're writing C#. And it's order singular, not orders plural. We'll see how a single order will create an orders plural table. And now we're into creating what is an order. You see, there's a lot of AI generated. I have GitHub Copilot on here, but I'm not going to use this. I'm a public int order ID. So this is my primary key. Primary order ID is the primary key. There's a convention here in Entity Framework. It's looking for the ID identifier. It could be uppercase, lowercase, doesn't really matter. It's looking for the words ID, and that will automatically turn into a primary key column in the table for your orders. Remember what a primary key does. Of course, primary key uniquely identifies each row in a table. And so to have an order ID, it's a unique identifier for that order. You could think of it as auto incrementing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. More securely, you would have a GUID, a globally unique identifier. But in this case, order ID is just an int. What else did our UML diagram have? I believe it had an order date. So let's do I like the prop tab. So hit prop, type in prop, and then hit tab once. And this is a date time tab order date. And I'm going to set a default for my order date to be a date time today. Okay, so we'll have a default value. Unless you change that, the default order date will be today. And a total amount. So I'll say a prop. Now, an order amount, there's a really good data type for that, which is a decimal. Decimals are meant to hold monetary values. So we're going to choose decimal here for total amount and no default value. Now what I want to do is I want to tie it in to the identity user. And so I'm going to have a navigation property that allows me to navigate to my user. So let me explain this a little better. Public identity user. Now notice as I type this, it's going to bring in a using statement. Up at the top, there's no using statement. If I tab this identity user called user, it will bring in the using namespace of ASP.NET Core identity. And I'm going to allow this to be nullable. And so if that's in fact what you want, does your order have to have a user? In this case, I would say it does. So I'm not going to allow it to be nullable, which gives you a little green squiggly. It says user must contain a non-null value. And so I'm sure there's other ways to solve that green squiggly besides marking that as nullable. But I want my orders to have users, so I don't want that. Now, the navigation property allows you to navigate into your user and pull out other fields about your user. So you could say, for this order, go to the user and get the user name, or go to the user and get the other field out of user. So it allows you to, when you're in the views, it allows you to navigate into this object that is, this is an aggregation, right? An order has a user, so this is an aggregation relationship. It's not inheritance. This is has a relationship. An order has a user. It allows you to navigate into that object that is a part of an order and then pull out the properties of that object. So the navigation property looks like that. And then, of course, we need the user ID, which we will call the identity user ID. And this is a foreign key property that actually says, okay, this is the ID of my user, which is right here. So identity user ID is the foreign key that aligns with the primary key of ASP.NET users .id. So primary key over here, foreign key over here. You'll notice that the navigation property is not represented in my UML diagram. And we kind of learned that you could add things like validate never onto that so it doesn't cause some unintended validation errors along the way. And that's cool. Now, just to get rid of the green squigglies, I suppose you can, I'll go without. Okay, now I have an order model. And what I want to do is I want to create that table in my database. In order to do that, I have to modify my context file. And so here's my context file. and I'm going to add in an orders table. And so what that looks like is public db set order. So I need to add a namespace, so show potential namespace, and add in this using statement models, so it knows what an individual order is. And line 14 really allows me to, this is where you name the table. This is the orders table, plural. We have an individual order, right? This is our class, an instance of an object. A class is the blueprint of an object, I should say. So this allows us to create individual orders, but this allows us to store those individual orders in an orders table. And that's all you need to create the table. So if I add a migration, let me explain a migration. A migration is anytime you're changing your database design, you're going to create a migration. And so it'll go inside the migrations folder. So I'm going to add a migration, call this add orders table. And let's see if I have any errors. This is oftentimes a place you can encounter errors. Okay, no errors. It's always a good idea to look at the migration file. You kind of see we're creating a table called orders, and these are the columns. There's an index that will be created on the table to help us look up orders quickly. There's some constraints. There will be a primary key. There will be a foreign key. So this looks about right for what I want to do. Now let me go ahead and run the migration to actually update my database. So this will actually modify my database to have an orders table. Prior to this, of course, there was no orders table. So I'm going to close the migration file. I'm going to close this context file. I'll close the order file for right now. So let's go back into here. Let me refresh my databases, web ordering DB, and then go into my tables. And now I can see I have a table for orders. Okay, now I don't have any orders, but nonetheless, I have a table where I can store orders. Cool. So back to my UML, we can create users with the built-in system, and now those users are linked to a one-to-many orders table. And the rest, I want to show another feature built into Visual Studio, which is really beneficial once you have the foundations of MVC and how it works, and how to do like CRUD operations on an entity. There's a feature that does a lot of code generation for you. I didn't want to introduce this to my class right away. I wanted you to get the foundations first of how all this works. Nonetheless, it's called scaffolding, and scaffolding is another word for generating a lot of code for you. So now that I'm ready to create a controller, again, I don't recommend this until you have some foundations under your feet, this scaffolding. What I'll do is I'll link to a video where I do all of this process very manually, and I don't use the scaffolding features because, again, if you don't have the foundations, it is just a black box that you don't understand. I do recommend kind of getting under the hood and understanding how models interact with controllers and interact with views and all the defaults and how data is passed around. However, for this example, we're going to add a controller, and I'm going to choose a different option. Instead of an empty controller, I'm going to choose controller with views using Entity Framework. And I'm going to choose my order class and application DB context and generate views. Just the rest will be default. This will be my orders controller, plural, which is correct. Now this will take a minute and spin, so I'll pause while that does that. And this is the crazy part. The crazy part is everything that you should know how to do when it comes to doing CRUD on an individual entity. It's all done when you do this scaffolding. And so here you can kind of see the index method gets a list of orders, getting an individual order, getting the order details of an individual order is built in, creating a new order, and that's a get method versus a post. This is also part of creating an order, modifying an order, an edit operation. It's all done for you. So if I go ahead and boot this up, our one-to-many is done for us. So let me go ahead and log in. Okay, now if I go to my /orders, of course you should have a link that takes you here, but if I go /orders, you can see this is the orders index view, create a new order, and I could just say today and $11. And of course, the ID is just saved there in a text box. Not very practical. You can hide that in a hidden field. But there you go. This user that I'm logged in, ending in 39, is able to create many orders. And I've just created 3 different orders under my one user. So of course, I can edit these. This edit operation allows a drop-down list of users. I only have one user in my system, so let me create another user. Let me register like my work email. So now I have 2 users in the system. Let me confirm that and log in as my other user. You'll see this user has a different user ID. If I go to /orders and I create a new order for the 30th of this month, $1,000, you can see this order has a different user, and of course I can have many orders as a different user. And well, we got all the CRUD operations. So point is, built-in identity system, awesome. To create a one-to-many relationship, you actually, I'll tell you, what you don't have to do is actually quite nice, because if I were to create a one-to-many between order and order detail, you actually have to do a list. And this is actually where we're headed in this class. I would create a list of maybe order detail. Now I don't have this type. Okay, this is just order detail, and I'll call this order details. Okay, so for an order to have many order details, I need to have a list. So that one-to-many between order and order detail, this is just showing you how to create a one-to-many between some classes that you're creating. However, we didn't create this ASP.NET. We didn't create the user class here. In this system, it was built for us. So we didn't have to modify the class to add a list of an orders. Okay, hopefully that makes sense, but you can have a list of orders simply by saying that every order has a mandatory user and a foreign key property. So that's your one-to-many relationship. That is CRUD operations, of course. as I let me close this so I don't end the video with an error message, non-working application. I just think I was running. Of course, it was working. Let me troubleshoot this real quick. Okay. Sometimes Visual Studio just needs a reboot. And so I rebooted Visual Studio. It gave me an accurate error message, which is that somehow I brought in a namespace that you couldn't bring in. So delete that namespace. I don't know how I did that, but you move fast. That's what happens. And you make mistakes like that sometimes. Now build succeeds. And there we have it. Okay, so one-to-many between identity users and orders. This is a start. Of course, hope you enjoyed.